if I may take this moment.
The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Your Excellency, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, and Mr. Clark Gayford, Your Excellency, the Honourable Speaker of Parliament, the former President, Rotepele Nailetikau and Antiquela Nailetikau, members of the Cabinet, Ministers, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Binaka, Kia ora, and good evening to you all. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for joining us tonight as we honor a new chapter in the Fiji-New Zealand relationship. It's great to finally have our good friend, the Prime Minister, here in Fiji for a first official visit. As you'll have heard, Jacinda and I have had the pleasure of meeting several times before at the Pacific Islands Forum in Tuvalu and the last two UN General Assemblies in New York. In fact, during our first encounter in 2018, I actually got the chance to meet little Neve, who was just 3 months old at that time. Well, I was sad to hear that the now toddler wouldn't be joining us here in Fiji. I think we can all recognize that the media spotlight can be tough on a little one. So I'm happy to settle for a slightly less adorable all the same, Father Clark instead. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those journalists who made the flight over and are joining us tonight. I'll try to keep tonight's remarks rather brief and prefer not to keep you here for too long. In all seriousness, I will say that despite certain sections willfully ignoring the positive strides made in our country, Fiji has a surprising ally in the New Zealand media when it comes to covering a passion shared between myself and Prime Minister Ardern, the urgency of climate change. And for that, I thank you. I once thought hell would freeze over before we saw much of positive stories on Fiji coming through. But in an age where extreme temperatures have become the new normal, perhaps I waited too soon. It's a refreshing contrast with some of your climate-denying counterparts around the world. But I promise Alan Jones was not on the invitation list for this evening. So there will be no calls for shoving a sock down anyone's throat tonight. I'll even have security watch the doors and check the bathrooms to make doubly sure. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, jokes aside, this visit is about celebrating the rich and enduring friendship between Fijians and Kiwis. I thank the Prime Minister for making this trip a priority and for taking the Pacific reset to heart. Through interactions with Pacific Island leaders at last year's PIF in Funafuti, New Zealand's genuine desire for renewed and strengthened connection among our regional family was clear. We watched as my friend Akisi Pohiva, the late Prime Minister of Tonga, who came in not so good health, knowing that this PIF would be his last, shed tears after hearing the desperate pleas of Tuvaluan children, worried about the fate of their families and their country. And we heard loud and clear Jacinda's strong message on climate change and its impact to Pacific Island countries. At this afternoon's press conference, I said Prime Minister Ardern was a leader who listened, and I meant it. In the Pacific spirit of Talanoa, we value that trait in anyone. The respect she has shown for our way of life and a sincere empathy for our suffering through a changing climate will not be forgotten. In my eyes, the humility and the subtle strength shown by the Prime Minister at PIF, despite representing the second largest nation in the room, has proven to be one of the two defining moments in Jacinda's time in office to date. The other was, of course, an unshaken response to the hate-filled acts of terror carried out at mosque in Christchurch last year, and the comfort she lent in a time of immense fear, grief, and mourning. They are us. Those few words helped unite a nation and inspire the world. And behind the words stood a remarkable story of resilience, of compassion, and action that I believe set a new benchmark for how any leader can help a wounded nation heal. And we in Fiji, with a sizable diaspora community in Christchurch, needed that healing comfort here on the ground, as we learned that 3 of our own were among the fallen. In a moment clouded by darkness, New Zealand harnessed the power of national unity, allowing the best of humankind to shine through. Those 3 words, they are us, embody an ideal which I have pursued for the Fijian people since my first day as Prime Minister. Jacinda sees what I see, that being a Fijian or being a New Zealander is not about who you are, what you look like, or what religion you follow. It is about the love you hold in your heart, love for your country, and love for your fellow citizens. And when we tap into the fabric of nationhood that binds our people together, there is no challenge we cannot overcome. I thank you.
Ina tino rangatira, tina koutou, tina koutou, tina koutou katoa. Nisa Bulavanaka, namaste and good evening. Prime Minister Bainimarama and Mrs. Bainimarama, Your Excellencies, Honourable Speaker, Andy Koila, Acting Chief Justice, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are so delighted to be here today and so honoured by the hospitality that you have shown us. And Prime Minister, the warmth of that hospitality, as I've said many times, we have felt from the moment the plane doors opened and we arrived on your soil. And particularly, can I say that this evening is an absolute delight, and at this rate, may act as a substitute for Clark and I's wedding. So, thank you for joining us for this intimate event. And particularly, can I acknowledge the band? I felt most at home with some of the New Zealand songs that you've been playing tonight, which has been lovely and greatly appreciated. Thank you especially, Prime Minister, for welcoming us, even though we disappointed you greatly by not bringing who really was the true guest of honour, which was Niamh Tiaraha Gayford. And you remain the first world leader that Niamh ever met, and it was a warm meeting that I will remember for a very, very long time to come. I think in that moment when you came rushing over to see Niamh, she was in a little carry case. We'd bought a carry case, a professional one. It wasn't I didn't have her in a suitcase. She was in a basket for babies, and the Prime Minister came rushing over and barely made eye contact with me as he went for the basket to see Niamh. And I remember we had several photos and we talked, and ever since then we've talked about our families. And Frank, that speaks to me about the values that you hold and the care and love you have of your family and of your people. And I've sensed that every time I've heard you speak passionately on their behalf. Our visit comes at a very special time, Fiji's 50th year of independence, and I do want to acknowledge and congratulate Fiji on that milestone. And we're proud to have enjoyed diplomatic ties with Fiji ever since your independence was declared, and that speaks to the history that we have together now as nations too. We're joined by historical, cultural, educational, business and sporting links, and in particular our love of rugby, even if the Prime Minister supports the Wallabies, and drinks, I've noticed. And just to add insult to injury, I've noticed he drinks Australian red wine as well, so there's a little bit for us to work on. 25,000 Fijians call New Zealand home, and nearly 200,000 New Zealanders visit Fiji every year and experience your incredible hospitality. The Fijian community in New Zealand makes such a huge contribution to New Zealand society, and I know also gives back to Fiji as well. And as friends and neighbours, we're there for each other in times of need too. As has been said, New Zealand greatly valued Fiji's friendship and support following the 15th of March terrorist attack last year. In fact, you, Prime Minister, were one of the first to reach out and express your condolences and solidarity, which meant so much to us. And you did that while, of course, carrying your own loss. 3 Fijians were among the 51 innocent people who lost their lives on the 15th of March. And I still remember the day after the attack at a community hall in Christchurch, being approached by one of the desperate women who was looking for her husband, not knowing where he was. She was from here. She was from Fiji, and I will forever carry her sadness and her grief that I saw and witnessed on that day. We bring with us, though, our commitment to continue to honour the memory of all those who fell on our soils. Similarly, when Fiji has been hit by cyclones and natural disasters, we've equally tried to reach out the hand of friendship, and following tropical cyclones in the last year, we supported a deployment of personnel, water and food to Fiji's isolated Lao group. Previously, we provided support for Fiji's response to and recovery from the devastation of Tropical Cyclone Winston. And we did that because we are a nation in and of the Pacific, because we have a responsibility to one another, but most of all, because we are friends. And we are friends who have shared interests, and also we are friends who have shared challenges. Our communities, they value the same things, and the Prime Minister has spoken of them. They value their well-being of their community. They value gender equality and human rights and strong democratic values and the rule of law. And so on those shared values, I do want to touch on just a few areas where I do genuinely believe there is even more that we can do together. After all, Fiji is New Zealand's most important trading partner in the Pacific and our 19th largest globally. We enjoy more than a staggering $1 billion in diverse two-way trade. Interestingly, biscuits rank very high on that agenda. I know there's someone in this room that's very pleased I mentioned that. New Zealand is a major supplier, of course, of services to Fiji, and Fiji's second largest tourist market, again, second fiddle to Australia, but we'll keep working on that. We see potential to further grow our trade and our investment relationship, and we're really pleased then to be partnering in some of your incredibly ambitious programs of economic reforms. But as you, Prime Minister, have so ably advocated, economic prosperity is nothing without the well-being of our planet. And we have a shared interest and belief in addressing the environmental challenges our countries and region face. Both our nations take our responsibility in the concept of what we call kaitiakitanga, or guardianship, very, very seriously. And that's why I believe ultimately that connection that we have to the whenua, the land, and that you have equally to the ocean and the land, means that we are joined in our commitment and leadership role that we all must play on climate change in the Pacific and internationally. And so in particular, I want to acknowledge that leadership role that you have personally played, Prime Minister, and also the ambitious vision that we have for the agreement on climate change, trade and sustainability, which I think will be a trade tool that will stand the test of time. And then there are issues of security. Earlier today, I visited your National War Memorial, and I have to say I was overwhelmed by the very visual demonstration of your commitment to peacekeeping, global peacekeeping. As I walked through those who were standing there who had given such long service, medals showing 18 years of service, to medals showing commitment to Sinai, to Sudan. That is testament to the huge role that Fiji has played in global peacekeeping. We place great importance on our defence relationship, including the Republic of Fiji Military Forces New Zealand Defence Force Partnership Programme, and I look forward to continuing to intensify that relationship and expanding it in areas that we discussed today, like transnational organised crime. But of course, these relationships are about more than just matters of security, promoting well-being, promoting issues of gender equality, human rights, both high on our agenda. I'm incredibly pleased tomorrow to be meeting with some of the female leaders in your society, and am impressed that, of course, here in Fiji, you have 20% of the representation in your parliament are women, the highest representation of women in the Pacific. There is much we can do to spread that representation throughout the Pacific and nudge along those who haven't reached quite the same levels that you have here in Fiji. We're proud also to be partnering with you and working on other areas of poverty alleviation, again, working on issues involving children, matters that I feel very, very deeply about also. Finally, one other pillar of cooperation is good governance. Last year we were pleased to welcome 8 parliamentarians from Fiji to New Zealand, and in turn our speaker led a New Zealand parliamentary delegation to Fiji in 2019. I think again, that's an area that we should only continue to invest more in, those people-to-people exchanges. Ultimately, it is my humble view that the Fiji-New Zealand relationship is warmer, stronger and more productive than it's ever been. We are friends, we are natural partners, we have values based on mutual respect and shared values that the Prime Minister spoke so eloquently of, and we're committed to working together to ensure our strong ties endure another 50 years. Vinaka, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ia kotapatagi, ia kotagira.